Hello and welcome to another episode of Mobile Technology Spotlight, sponsored by Samsung Electronics and presented by Public Safety Insight. Samsung is committed to supporting public safety and helping first responders to use technology as a force multiplier. I'm Dale Stockton, and today I'm joined by two great guests. Justin Davis, Information Systems Specialist for the Special Operations Section of Hamilton County Sheriff's Office in Tennessee, and Amos Halava, who's a Senior Manager for Public Sector at Samsung. Both of these guys are about as knowledgeable as anybody in the country in terms of TAC. And you're going to hear more about TAC in just a minute and how it's truly changing situational awareness, common operating picture, you name it, command and control. TAC is really impacting the way public safety is working in the field. So with that, Amos, maybe you could start us off with an overview of TAC, where it came from, what it does, how it's been used.
Yeah, Dale, I'll be real brief, but thank you for this opportunity. So TAC was developed by the U.S. military as a kind of like a modern version of Blue Force Tracker. It was a way for soldiers downrange to speak with aircraft and other units about where they were at, where other units were, and where they wanted, something to happen. And it was developed by the Air Force Research Lab, and because of that. TAC to the rest of us now, which is known on the civilian side as the Team Awareness Kit, is a single pane of glass situational awareness tool that we get to use at no cost. And the reason I say no cost is because all the code, all the applications you can download at no cost. The only cost per se is to run your own server. You got to have some server space, or you've got to then train people how to use it and manage it so that you're not just opening something up for everybody in the world if you're just wanting to use this for your team. And that's kind of like what led to what we're going to talk about today. And but if you're talking about situational awareness, that's beyond what our immediate see, taste, feel, smell, and hear is, right? It's not just what's around me, but what's on the other side of that hill or the other side of that street or on the other side of town. Where are people? What are they doing? What direction are they headed? How fast are they going? Can I see them with a drone, or can I, look at a camera and see what's going on faster? It's that type of stuff. It's like, what can I do to reach out to be able to make a better informed decision that affects that mission, whether it's a planned or unplanned event?
That's great, Amos. And Amos, as I go forward with Justin, feel free to add anything, ask him a question, expand on something he said, because we want this to be informative for the audience and conversational. So, Justin, you've gained quite a reputation for innovation and effectively leveraging technology for public safety, but particularly in the area of tax. So let's drill down a little bit from what Amos just explained. It you've got all these data streams that you're integrating: CAD, vehicle location, people, drones, feeds. So, from your experience of those integrated data streams, which tend to be the most impactful in day-to-day operations, and perhaps which ones surprise people when they see them for the first time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question, Dale. Thank you again, for having me. When it comes to integrations, the cool thing about TAC is it can do it all. So you can have all these different layers that you can turn on and off. So I'd say that honestly depends on the person. It depends on what your role set or the mindset that you have in that mission is. If you are the incident commander or such, maybe CAD location, drone location, things like that. Video feeds are the most important. But if you're the guy downrange, maybe you don't need to be looking at the drone feed. Maybe you're more worried about where the teammate is, or where that next car coming in to help you is. So I think that really depends on who it is that's using it. Again, the cool thing about TAC is all that stuff is there and available. I tell my guys all the time, hey, turn this layer off, turn this one on. Even if it's off, you can just easily click that layer back on, and now you can see those aircraft. You can see that CAD call with all the notes, the vehicle locations, the drones, you name it. So it's really dependent on who's downrange and what the mission calls for.
So, the thought occurs to me, if I'm hearing about this for the first time, I'm thinking what my experience has been in public safety until recently. We've got all these siloed data streams,
Mhm.
proprietary systems. They don't talk to each other. My CAD, I can't look at your data, and vice versa. Is it true that TAC kind of smooths all that out? It's the great common denominator that lets you share information.
Absolutely. Hands down, it is the platform for interagency communication. I'll tell you a quick little story. We actually had one of our deputies fall in the line of duty a couple months ago. And during that time, during the time of his funeral, and the day or two, before and after, we actually had agencies come down from Blount County, from Maryville PD, from just a handful of agencies that are far outside our jurisdiction that have likely never patrolled a day in Hamilton County in their life, and here they are, taking calls and handling business so that our guys can be at the funeral, with one another. And in the past, they would come in blindly, maybe with a GPS system, but that's the only tool that they had. This year, whenever they came to help, we gave them TAC. And with TAC, they now had access to our CAD system. They could see where each other was, and more importantly, we could also see where they were too. Should they have gotten into something, we could go find them and help them out. So TAC was really a powerful tool during that moment by connecting these two agencies that don't usually talk together, giving full info to where they could read all the details in real time, exactly what that 911 dispatcher was putting into those call notes. It was invaluable time.
That's a great explanation. I'm sorry for the loss of your officer, obviously, but it underscores just how useful this can be. Now, this doesn't just happen. And I remember early on in TAC, there was a lot of challenge in standing up that TAC server that supports all this. What was the experience like, and what is it like now? How did that come about?
Yeah, I'd challenge even the wording that you said of a long time ago. I'd say, tell me 6 months ago, tell me a year ago, the whole landscape was absolutely night and day difference. Um, now, I'm sorry, back then. I came from the IT side in the sheriff's office. Came from the IT side, and now I work the special ops side of things when it comes to TAC. And I was handed TAC as a project, and I said, "Hey, set this up. Here's a random patrol deputy. No offense, he has zero IT knowledge, but get him going. He's going to be the TAC guy." And we poured hours and hours into trying to set this server up. The amount of times I deleted it and restarted were just incredible. The amount of resources and the time that I took from our IT team also helping me was again astronomical. It was something that I think once I had it perfected, it still took about less than a day to do, but it was still a long day's worth of work for a very small return. That doesn't include your integrations. That doesn't include all these additional data feeds that you want to get in there. So I tell you, it was cumbersome. Now we've seen kind of two products come to the table. And by products, they're actually completely free. One is made by a guy named AJ. It's called InfoTac, and it is a nearly a one-click installer per se for tax over, and so it runs scripts that installs all the dependency. It does all the techie stuff that used to make this very difficult to do. Even myself coming from IT, I struggled with it. So now it kind of takes a lot of that stuff out of it and allows you to pick and choose exactly what you want to install onto this tax server. And the other half of that, which we'll get into a little bit, is a piece that I made called TAC Portal, which redefines user management. In my opinion, obviously I'm a little bit biased, but this is how I feel TAC should have come. I remember, back when I did spend that entire day setting up a TAC server, I expected to see something like what we have today with TAC Portal. Instead, I was a slight bit disappointed. And there's definitely room to grow. So yeah, it's definitely come a very, very long way, even in the last 6 months.
Excellent. So walk us through the onboarding process, because that's where a lot of this has really changed. How does it work now? Kind of give us a user perspective, both from the administrator, but also for the person showing up to help.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'll kind of do a before and after comparison. Before, all the only information that an administrator could put into TAC Portal was a username and a password, and then you assigned their access for groups, which was also a very hands-on, very tedious process. That obviously does not work when you think about my county, where we are wanting to give this tax server out to countless agencies. Now, every admin that I give access to this has access to the whole server. There's no way to control the level of access that they get. Um, so what TAC Portal does, it kind of hops in there as a middle ground to where now we can segregate out, admins to where, you may have myself or Amos or you as a global admin, a top level everything admin. But then we can go to someone, say at the sheriff's office, and say, hey, here's your login for a website. Go in here. You can manage your own people, you can manage your own groups. We can go to the PD, give them the same access, and those groups will stay completely separate unless that top level admin makes something that can bridge those two agencies together. So being kind of in our own, I don't want to say silos, but in our own lanes until the time comes that we need to not be, is something that TAC Portal really does well, in my opinion. Um, as far as onboarding, there's a couple different ways to do that. Um, the most common way, and what I do with my agency, is every single user, every single deputy has an account with TAC server, or with TAC portal. And this allows them on their own to log into the device, either through scanning a QR code, which auto signs them in, which is really, really neat, or just through manually typing in their credentials. Um, but one thing that TAC Portal really leverages is those QR codes. So we do something called mutual aid. Um, and an example of this is we had a neighboring county have a deputy go missing, went on a foot chase through the woods, and the deputy didn't have his radio on him, or maybe it went dead, didn't have a cell phone on him, so he didn't have the tools he needed to communicate. So our agency was called in to help search. We were able to use mutual aid during that time to give a QR code that we posted just in the command post where everybody showing up takes 2 minutes to scan that QR code, and now we can see their location on tags. They go into the woods. And then afterwards, we were able to just delete that. All those guys lose access. And obviously the guys with permanent accounts, those continue on day to day.
So the QR code part of this, it's something people might underestimate just how pivotal this is. What's actually happening in the back end when someone scans that code, and how does it change the dynamic when you've got literally hundreds of people from multiple agencies? Many of them have never met each other before. How has that changed everything?
Absolutely, yeah. So in that QR code, it's a very specific link to TAC server itself. They've published a standardized format for that to do. So it can put in the server details, it can put in username, it can put in the user's password. TAC Portal actually does this very securely, and we actually use a 15-minute token. So once that token you use it, it expires, then that login goes away. That device actually stays signed in, because what it does is once it authenticates those credentials, it actually downloads a certificate file to the device itself. That TAC portal checks in on every little bit to make sure that it's still valid, obviously. Um, but that QR code is, like you said, there's tons of power in it. And again, not to keep telling stories, but we did an active shooter training a couple months ago. It included every SRD in our agency. It included all the volunteer fire departments that were in the area where we were practicing, included some city guys, and even a few, school administrators and staff that typically are not going to have TAC. Um, about 70 of them in total. So from a gym auditorium, right before we went out and did the drill, We were able to get all 70 people onboarded. I'd like to say in about 5 or 6 minutes. Um, it was probably a little bit less. That 5 or 6 included me going up to a few people that were having issues. So it really is as simple as putting a QR code up on the screen or on the whiteboard to download the app, and then a second QR code to get them logged in and get them going with just the basic info. Again, from a command post side of things, I like to say, give me 2 or 3 minutes with every group that's deploying to wherever we're going out to, and that I can have them logged in, trained up, and ready to go to at least do the basics. And again, as much as I love guys using TAC in the field, it really comes down to a command tool. It's great if they know how to use it, drop pins and do all that stuff, but command also has a very big presence towards if they just let that run. I tell my guys, if you're showing up on scene to an active incident, do your job. Focus on, let's take care of the threat. Let's do whatever we were called there to do. Let's help others. Let's save life. But before you get out of your car, tone tack on and just chuck it into the plate carrier, chuck it into the pocket, just so that command can know where you are and we can manage that from the command side rather than being downrange in the gunfight or whatever it is, looking down at the phone. So different scenarios. There's a different time for everything.
Yeah, you bring up a great point in terms of command, and I want to drill down on that for just a minute, because I think most of us think in terms of just the dot on the map, but that dot has a lot of information associated with it, right? So from the command and
Absolutely.
control aspect, what am I able to see beyond just location?
Yeah, so the two things I'm looking for obviously the most is yes, location number one. Number two, I'm looking at in our county we do everything based off color codes. So color codes and then what's called role inside TAC. So I can see where are my SWAT guys at compared to my normal patrol guys. Where are my team leaders? Where are my captains? Things like that. But even from the device itself, TAC server exposes or shows you. Um, the type of phone the TAC is running on, which is helpful to know from a command side because that tells me as a TAC manager what data can I send this individual. Thankfully we're bridging that gap between Android and iPhone right now with things like TAC Aware, but still important to note it also exposes things like battery life. So on my vehicle, I keep a cache of portable batteries, phone chargers that I can just hand out in the field that have charge, cords taped up to them. So that way, when I see on the map that someone's phone's starting to go low, I can hand that off to the next guy going in and say, hey, deliver this to your buddy. He needs it. And then you use it once he's done with it. Um, so things like that are very valuable. One thing too, just to kind of hop back to the integration side, one thing that we found too for those active incidents where maybe you don't have the chance to look down and turn TAC on your phone is having we have Axon body cams, so having those integrated is invaluable because it is nearly the same as having TAC on your phone. We can see the locations of those body cams the second that deputy starts recording on it. And again, that's an invaluable tool just to gather location and to get that broader picture of what does the perimeter look like? What does inside look like? Just what does the environment, where are we at and where are gaps that need to be filled?
That's awesome. Amos, I want to loop you back into this. Would you comment on what you've heard from Justin thus far? Perhaps what they're doing that you haven't seen from other agencies, and bring a global picture to it in terms of how you see TAC benefiting not just law enforcement, but public safety around the country.
Yeah, I would really just like I enjoyed listening to Justin telling his story there, right? Because he has such a broad depth of knowledge on this topic, and to add to that would be my experience of setting up TAC servers where we would spend like even when Justin's first started TAC Portal, I spent weeks trying to make that work on my end. Where when InfraTAC come in, it was literally just a click deploy and it worked, and for him and AJ to collaborate and pull that together into this just seamless integration. And now I run a tax server for the state of Tennessee where we have 50 agencies with over 800 users that are on one server with the integrations like Justin talked about with body cams, cradle points. We're tracking aircraft. We're track drones through a few different systems where it feeds into it. Um, Even Amtrak trains. Where we can see these assets moving around and have this view of what's going on to include TFRs. AJ put that into Infratrack with a Node-RED integration where we have a data sync that gives us where our TFRs come up and go down so that you can stay aware. IPAWS data for weather alerts that are coming through. And to get that whole broad picture now in a way that is simple and easy to deploy can't be overstated. And Justin takes a very humble approach to the work that he has done, but I will throw those kudos out there that he has revolutionized user management in the way when he says that that's what he thought TAC would be when he got it. I get why the military wrote it the way that they did, but that didn't take into account public safety, first responders, needing to onboard maybe 300 or 400 people to work an unplanned weather event. And then, to the next day, be able to just tear all that down and say, okay, we're done working this event. We could go on to the next thing. Um, he has made that all so simple. Uh, from a management perspective, where I have done that and managed these things and tried to get users onboarded and try to teach people, hey, go here, type in this here and this there. Now they just open the camera up on their phone, scan that QR code, and they have the same view that I've got, that 911 has, that the command center has. And that was it. They took a scan with their phone camera and they were done. Um, that allows you to really bring on people quicker to get that view. So for him telling his story and how he brought it through, and we could do a podcast 4 or 5 hours long on the officers who have used this to their benefit, right? That have had that help show up quicker because they knew exactly where they're at. That can't be overstated because one of the things that this will do and the work that Justin did is it will save lives where people have no idea their life has been saved because somebody was able to get there faster, get a resource to them where it was needed, and they'll never understand that the work that he put into this at his own expense, uh, and then putting it up on GitHub at no cost to anybody who wants to use it can't be overstated. Um, I'm not sure if that's actually where he was wanting to go, but as I was listening to him talk, that was some of the stuff that was coming to me that I wanted to just kind of throw out there that uh, this has been a game changer. I was at a very large police department just within the last month, and they're like, I tried to spin up a tax server. I spent like a month on it, but I just kept getting stuck or something, and then something else would come up. So it just kind of went to the wayside. And within an hour, we had an instance up and running for them, and that was unprecedented. You couldn't have, I would have never even attempted that before. And now it's like a no brainer. It's like, hey, here, let's go do this. We can make this happen very quickly. And it happened, and they were able to use it for, some FIFA events that they were doing. So this level of work that's been done has been tremendous by both AJ and Justin. And what he added with TAC Portal is that piece that should have come with TAC Server day one, right? That is the piece that should have been there. But I think by having someone like himself who did things the hard way, we got a better product out of it in the long run that really answers the need that a lot of people had in a way that probably nobody else would have gotten because they didn't see that big picture. And you can listen to Justin talk and tell that he really understands the difficulties that were involved, and he really understands what the solution was needed, and that's what he built.
Yeah, kind of jumping off of that, one thing I noticed early on when I was building Tac Portal, I never, and I'll tell this to anybody, I never anticipated this bit helping or, doing anything outside of my own agency. I selfishly built this as a tool for me, over Christmas break, thinking, this is, a little one-off project, probably not going to work, but, we'll see where it goes. And now, we have entire states relying on this and looking at it for those systems. So it's really just humbling and cool to see that. But kind of to his point, I immediately after building it and I deployed it at my agency, I started looking around like, man, what did I do all day, every day back then? Because just the user management took so much time, even with only 60 people on our server at the time. Still, managing those 60 people was difficult. If I wanted to add a new group or a new channel, that's a layer in TAC. If I wanted to add a new one of those to all 60 people, that was by hand. I had to click every user, I'd first have to know their username, click that, drag and drop that channel in, hit save, and do that 60 times over for every single person. So now when we're looking at tax servers of 500, 1,000, 2,000 people, again, TAC Portal is kind of that, that easy management interface where you just click assign to every agency, and within seconds, you've pushed out something new to everybody. It's just an invaluable tool. And also just, hop in on one other thing they said too, talking about saving life, with that county that we went to go help and find that deputy, I actually sat at home. That area is in a terrible spot for cell service. Um, I sat at home for a couple of hours as the event was getting started, and I was watching my team tracking live on the map. And then later that evening, whenever I showed up there, I could not get a single text out. I could not get a phone call out. And I was standing in the exact same spot where I was watching them track location just fine on tack. So the optimizations and such that are there is just night and day difference from things like Find My Friends or things like that. Find My Friends is something that unfortunately, our SWAT team used to use. We had a mass incident down the south side of the county 2 years before I was with the agency, but I was very much aware of it. And our SWAT team guys were using Find My Friends and things like that to locate each other. And that's just not an operational tool that's built for that purpose. So having something that's purpose driven but can also be flexible to different situations is really invaluable with TAC.
Excellent, excellent. Amos, I'd like you to drill down just for a minute on something that Justin just opened the door to, and that is no cell coverage and what's emerging now in terms of direct to cell with satellite technology. And I know you've had a really key role in working with at least one of the carriers. Share with the audience what's happening and what's changed.
Yeah, so with the emerging satellite technologies like TSAT, I've personally went out with a TSAT enabled cell phone and had TAC working and tracking in a completely cellular denied area. Uh, and it works great. You can go online to YouTube, and Kotak has done classes on that and how they have had huge successes in areas with no cellular coverage using TAC on satellite base. So as the other carriers start to spin up their cellular or their satellite data solutions that work off of your phone, that is going to be one of the largest game changers in this, is because when you have that unplanned event that takes out infrastructure, land-based infrastructure, the thing about TAC is it can work over those satellite links. It can work over those mesh network links like, Gotenna, Beartooth, Meshtastic, things like that, that you can still get data out of areas where there is no traditional internet infrastructure. And especially with the deployment of Starlinks and TSAT, and as the others come online, that's going to be the game changer, because now you're still going to be able to communicate, track people, look for those areas where you need to send people because maybe you're getting nothing out of that area. you know that's the key, right? Is as in your pace plan, we all have radios, we all have cell phones, we all have this, but as that infrastructure gets taken out, it's like, what do you fall back on next? Well, there's ways you can do that with TAC. That's the one thing about the TAC platform, is integrating with those other off-grid technologies gives you that edge in that critical incident where your tool can't fail, because if it does, you're going to lose people, and you don't want that to happen.
Excellent. So let's, as we bring this to a close, that's kind of a nice segue to demobilization at the end of an event. That's been an operational challenge in some of these things. So that's changed, hasn't it, Justin? Can you explain what takes place after an event?
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's one of the main goals of Tactpole. It's not only that front end user management, but again, that management piece that continues all the way through. And I'll be honest, some of these tools, portal is still getting updates every 2 or 3 days. I'm constantly adding features, adding changes. That's the coolest thing about being a community-driven project is that I'm all the time getting messages. Hey, can you add this? Can you add that? Hey, tax we did this. Lots of things that are blowing my mind. I didn't even know that could be done. But then I figure out how to integrate it into Tac Portal. That depends on kind of what the situation is. If it's something like a county fair or something that I'm going to go back to again next year, the first thing I'm going to do is hop in Tac Portal and I can download that a zip package of all the markers on the map. And I'll do that for critical incidents too if we end up using pointers and tracks and things like that. But I can download that all those shapes, all the marks on the map, everything that we dropped, save that in a folder, um, and then come next year we'll just re-upload it, and I've already got a map ready to go that just needs a few maybe small tweaks depending on what the county fair. They move the Ferris wheel 20 feet over. Okay, that's a simple fix. But then as far as the user management side, it built in Tac Portal has a feature called mutual aid. And that's where you put that single QR code up that you can blast out to 50, 100, 150 people. I think I do have one agency that's used it for 200 at an event. So the cool thing about that is it's just one button. You just click delete, and now all those users that did have access don't have access, and it removes their access to re-log in again. So just a super one-click process. Used to, you'd have to go into command line and manually type a lot of that stuff out. So now it's way simpler to just revoke all those certificates on those devices, move on to life, and you probably didn't even know the extent of what's happening behind the scenes that Tac Portal's doing, all the things that's jumping through to do that.
That's great. That's great. If I were hearing all of this today, not having full awareness of TAC, I want to know more. So let's close out with that. How do you find out more? This community that you talk about and these updates. Where is that information, Justin? How to get plugged in?
Yeah, so the best way, kind of for the tax side of things, is we have a Slack channel that kind of everything happens in. That's where you'll find myself, you'll find AJ, you'll find Amos, really all the guys that are helping to build these things. But you'll also find other people that it's the first time setting up a tax server, and so that's really cool. Is it's very community oriented. We're all the time hopping in the chat, helping each other out on a day-to-day basis. So joining that tax or that tax Slack. Amos may have more details on it because honestly, I'm not great with the words. So he may have more details on that. But then also, as far as InfoTac itself, just Google that INFRA TAC TAK, and find that GitHub, and that really walks you through step by step of how to get this deployed. Both of those are great resources.
Amos, why don't you add your closing comments and whatever you want to say in terms of getting more info?
Yeah, no, Justin covered it there. The Slack group that we have that is mostly public safety oriented is probably the best place to get started, especially if you have like a data set that you're not quite sure how to integrate. And that's the other thing is a lot of the LLMs out there are a great source to dump in an API and say, hey, this is what I'm doing with it, and I want to use Node-RED and push this into a tax server. It can actually build you those flows that you can just paste into your instance and it's up and going. So it's not the hard that we used to have where you would literally spend weeks writing code and testing. Use the models out there that can help you do that. Get on the Slack group, ask questions, get you something spun up and play with it. That's always the best place to get started. Or reach out to some of us that run some test servers, and I can throw you up because of Justin's Tac Portal. I offer this out to a bunch of partners that I work with to say, hey, if you need to get on and test something, here's a server you can get onto, and they manage it themselves. And it uses Tac Portal to do that. But then it allows people to get in, learn the technology, see the value of it, and experience it them for themselves. And then they're going to understand, oh, now I get it. Because there's nothing like doing it yourself and seeing it in your hand and understanding the product to get somebody sold on it. I can talk ideas all day long, but until you use it and do it, it's not going to stick. And that's what I'd encourage people to do. Reach out to myself, reach out to Justin, get on the Slack group, ask us for a way to get into it. But Google InfoTac go find it on GitHub or TAC Portal. But InfraTAC is the place to start. Get you a box spun up and just play with the technology, get it out there with a team of people, and you'll see real quickly why people get excited about this community and the tools that we're using to support it.
Excellent, excellent. So Justin Davis, Hamilton County Sheriff's, Amos Halava, Samsung, man, you guys are really supporting public safety. And that's what it means to serve. And you guys are doing that. So thank you for what you've done on behalf of public safety. That'll bring us to a close for this segment of Mobile Technology Spotlight. I want to thank Samsung for making this possible, and of course our two guests today for all that they do. Thank you, folks, and be safe out there.
Thanks, Dale.